Grandpa, when did you get the vintage car?
1972. It's been here since before you were born.
It's not really a car picture. The car is just a symbol of part of Walt. Walt sort of is the Gran Torino. He's worked on him in the factory, and he's as antique as they are.
Yo, now that's a nice car.
Hell yeah. 1972 Gran Torino fastback.
Yo, Cobra jet engine.
Hey, yo, man, it's still in mint condition.
Most kids are interested in cars when they grow up, and in Walt's case, he's always interested in cars because he was in that business.
It's his pride. It's his, I guess, last standing thing he could claim and be proud of, because he made the car himself and he loves it.
He put the steering column in that vehicle, and it's his prized possession. He allowed himself one beautiful thing.
One of my favorite scenes in this movie is the scene where Walt is polishing the Gran Torino, and he goes up on the porch and he sits down and he has a beer as the sun's setting.
She's sweet.
I think that's a moment that so many men can relate to, is just that feeling of satisfaction of, you know, owning the car that you love and taking care of it and shining it up and having it out there for people to see.
Most of the cars that I liked growing up were all 30s cars because they weren't making cars during the war. So the 40s cars were really in demand. My first car was a 32 Chevy Coupe. It was all rusted out and it cost $25. And I was a kid, and that was my first car.
When I was younger, I had quite a few different cars. I don't know really if I had any dream cars. I just usually looked for something that was fast. I didn't really care what it was, you know. I've always been kind of into fast cars.
My dad always had cool convertibles, and I always loved them. And they were big. It was either a Lincoln or a Caddy. I always thought when I grow up I want an Eldorado Cadillac like my dad, you know. I never got one.
The 72 Gran Torino that we have in this movie is particularly familiar to me. I mean, I was growing up in high school, I had a 72 Cutlass, and I had a friend who had a 72 Gran Torino, so that's where I developed a real love of cars, especially cars from this era.
Owning a car is like a rite of passage for most men. They are able to buy something, or maybe they're handed down something from their parents, or maybe they work and they buy something and go out there and express themselves with it. This is me. This is what I am. This is how I want the world to interpret my personality.
The first time I had my own car, that was a very proud moment for me, I'm not gonna lie.
I think every adolescent goes through that feeling of attaining freedom when you finally get your wheels, you know, and you can leave the nest and you can go out with your buddies, and then more importantly, eventually pick up girls and take them away from their homes and on dates.
If he doesn't ask you out, I'm gonna ask you out.
He beat you to it.
Really?
You're taking the bus.
No, you can't take the bus. Gotta get you something more stylish than that. How about that?
The Gran Torino.
Yeah.
You'd let me take the Gran Torino.
I think that men love cars because the better their car looks, the more manly they feel. Like, you know, they can get girls easier, I guess. Not true.
Performance cars, fast cars, sports cars, muscle cars, they all speak to our own personalities. And guys would tend to want to choose the car that they feel would express themselves the best.
The Gran Torino, I think, would match Walt's personality kind of like to a T. It's kind of, you know, it's got that to it. So, I mean, you can't get more testosterone out of a car than like a Gran Torino.
Most men appreciate cars on a very deep level. They can appreciate them for their performance, for their looks, for how they make them feel when they're behind the wheel.
When you're young, you like cars with a lot of flash, convertibles, that kind of thing. And when you're older, you like cars that have a lot of iron around them, in case you pile it up.
My dream car now, it would be one of the early 70s muscle cars, probably not a Gran Torino, but it'd be like a big block, GM car.
My dream car would be a 365 GTP Ferrari or a Daytona Spider.
A Corvette, a black Corvette. I don't know why, but I like black.
Porsche 911, that's me.
Maybe a 95 Buick Park Ave, the Supercharger.
I would love to be driving an old 68 fastback Mustang like Queen drove in Bullet, because that was one of my favorite movies, and I love that car.
Maybe an Aston Martin, as long as somebody else is paying for the oil changes and the dings on the bumpers, because I hear an oil change is like $700, so I think my love affair would end there.
When I go through midlife crisis, I'll probably buy a Viper. But we'll see, you know. Hopefully I'll never go through midlife crisis.
Clint's a car guy. He likes cars. He knows a lot about cars. He's probably a better mechanic than most people would think. You know, if there's something goes wrong with a car on the set or something, he's the first to come and analyze it, and he's usually pretty good at it. The problem with getting cars for our business is there's two ways to go. The collectors don't want to get their cars dirty, and the guys that just rent the cars to you are mostly pretty rough cars. So it's trying to find that fine line, especially with Clint. He doesn't like anything that looks like it was a restoration or a classic car. He wants it to look like it was supposed to look at the time. So it's quite a search, and you usually go to swap meets and stuff like that to find that stuff. This car was owned by a classic car broker that had a bunch of cars, which we just found it on the internet in a old Ford Trader magazine. Clinton really liked it. The color was fine, and it runs great. The interior was great, so we were pretty lucky.
And brought it to Michigan, and when we finished, we were talking about selling it there locally, so we didn't have to haul it all the way back to California. And then, as the movie progressed and we all became rather fond of the car, I discussed it with Clint again. I said, maybe you want to keep this thing, or you want to send it back? And he says, yeah, let's hold on to this car. It's been done right by us, so let's see what happens.
To a lot of people, cars are just a means of transportation. They get in them and they drive around to where they need to go. But for a lot of other people, a certain subset of society, there are folks that really treasure their car.
I work in the Ford factory for 50 years, and he's out selling Japanese cars.
You made cars?
Yeah. I put the steering column in this GRAN TORINO in 1972.
Generationally and culturally, Walt and Tao are able to bond when they're talking about the car, when they're talking about something other than their immediate relationship, and that's really kind of where they find that connection.
Walt knows he's got to help Tao, or wants to help Tao, and so the way he helps him is the only way he knows. He's not sending him to college. He's not going to try to teach him philosophy or how to turn the other cheek or any of that stuff. He just shows him what he knows.
Well, you are a pussy, you know. You want to hang out with guys like that. What was your initiation supposed to be? My GRAN TORINO? Christ almighty.
Part of Walt giving Tao that car is not giving it to his sons, because they didn't earn it, and he did. He definitely earned it.
He says to him, he says, "You're my friend, you've come a long way."
And so it stands there as the thing that brings Tao and Walt together. It involves a lot with both the characters. I mean, the GRAN TORINO might win an Oscar too.
Cars are an extension of our personality. Cars really are another layer of clothing. It's something that we put on after we get dressed, and that tells a lot about you.
This is Woodward Dream Cruise, and it's a once a year thing for people that come here.
This is Woodward Avenue, the main thoroughfare through suburbia of Detroit. This used to be the major cruise hangout area for all the teenage kids back in the 50s, 60s, and I don't know if it was about the cars more than it was just getting out there, just meeting people and having a good time, living life, enjoying yourself. You know, stop at the drive-in, just cruise around, just bring out your wheels and cruise. Detroit, the birthplace of the automobile for the most part. Everybody here either works for Ford, GM, Chrysler. If you don't know how to work on your vehicle, you know, people look at you like kind of sideways.
Bought this car 12 years ago. It only took about 20 years to acquire it. So after, what, 30-some years, I finally got my dream toy. This car is unique. The older cars, the older muscle, they all have distinct lines, and there's something fashionable about every single car. The cars that nowadays, they all look alike.
I enjoy playing with cars. I mean, that's basically what it is. Putting them together, driving them is fun. Okay, and I guess it just keeps us young since I'm old. You know, I just feel younger.
You always have a pretty car, you might play to get the pretty girls. It is the same, they will go hand in hand. It's just that unique bond between men and cars is just the fact that if they look good, you feel good. I think that's a good part about it.
My relationship to cars probably started when I was about 15 years of age. 59 now. It's been a long relationship with cars. I believe it's either in your blood or it's not. You either design them, or you work on them, or you race them. But it is in your blood, and the relationship is quite close.
In the early 50s and even into the late 60s, you could buy a car to fit your personality. This car, my dad owned one in 1961. It was the first one I had ever seen, and I'd never seen anything as beautiful. When I bought this car, it was something that I wanted to show my dad, part of his history and a part of mine. And so after the restoration was completed, I presented it to my dad, and he had very limited eyesight, but he was able to recognize what had taken place, and I'd never seen a smile on his face as big as it was that day. And we went for a ride.
I have a son that's 17, and actually this is his car. We spent many evenings in the garage wrenching on it. It gave me an opportunity to cultivate a relationship with my son from a man-to-man standpoint.
Well, my dad came home, I was 14 years old, and he said, I think I found it. I said, found what? He said, I found your car. So he bought it for me, $1,200, bucket of bolts, and it took us 6 years. And me and my dad decided it would be a good project to spend some time together. And you have your ups and downs, things don't go right, you have some big-time setbacks, but you look back on it, and you know, I'd never sell the car, just time you spend with your dad and stuff. It's not the car, it's just metal, plastic bolts. It goes way beyond that. It's the people you spend time with, your family, your friends, everybody that helped you out along the way.
For somebody to have actually had a hand in building the car, that gives them a special connection, a connection that most people just would not have.